States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blasbar?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mather? Mrs. Schott?
Here.
Joe Bento?
Here.
And Ann Etchells. Here.
Thank you. And if you could call the calendar.
Tuesday, February 4th, 2020, there's a school committee business meeting. And Tuesday, February 18th, 2020, there's a school committee business meeting.
Just because we are so close to the capacity of the room, I'm going to do a little bit of, with unanimous consent, juggling of the order of the agenda to get a couple things done first. So, Dr. O'Shea, I will turn it over to you briefly for recognitions.
Well, my first recognition, I have two, but I want to start with this one, is tonight we are looking to hire a new Assistant Director of Special Education, and that is Berta Combs. Berta is along the back wall, if you could wave to everyone, Berta. Ms. Combs' last position is the Director of Special Education in South Kingstown. She's held that recently, but for more years as the Assistant Director in South Kingstown. She has a great reputation amongst the state. We have letters of recommendation in your packets, and we couldn't be more pleased to have her joining us in NK. And I would ask that you could move that to the front right now. That would take care of two bodies in the room tonight.
Can I have unanimous consent to bring item E1 forward for consideration at this time? Any objections? I don't hear any objections, so I need a motion to approve item E1.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hoskins, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That is unanimous.
Thank you very much, everybody. Welcome.
And next, normally we do citizens' comments after presentations and recognitions. I assume some of you are probably here because you want to comment tonight, so if I could have unanimous consent to move citizens' comments up a tiny bit. No, I don't hear any objections. One thing I just want to note, I'm not certain why everyone is here tonight, but I can guess. We do not have anything on our agenda this evening with respect to the building use policy and the impact that that has with potential of percentages of fees for ticketed events. So we are not able to discuss that amongst the school committee members this evening. It's not on our agenda. I will let you know, you're all, if any of you are here to speak on that issue, even though it's not on our agenda, you are absolutely welcome to do that. We will listen to your comments. The school committee plans on, we're still hearing from different groups that are impacted on that, and we're expecting that we would vote on a new change to that policy on our April 14th meeting. So it's not going to happen for a little while, but in the meantime, it's been mostly suspended with the exception of the two main groups that have already been sort of in play on that. We have a list for citizens' comments. If you'd like to speak, if you haven't signed in already, if you could please do that. We do ask that anyone who's going to speak, please limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone can have the opportunity to speak. Thank you. So the first person is Cassidy Snyder, and if you could just speak your name and address for the record when you get to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cassidy Snyder, and I live at 10 Coriander Lane, North Kingstown, Rhode Island. I understand that you are not responding to public comment and that the issue of the 15% surcharge is not on the agenda tonight. But I ask you to try and understand that this is the reason why many of us are here tonight. Last night, I spoke at the town council meeting and briefly with Dr. Ajay himself after the meeting was over. I want you as a committee to know that we are not your enemy. We're not trying to be a problem, and instead, we're trying to offer a solution. If going to the town council during budget season and asking them to fund the capital reserves fund line item is what you need, myself and other students will be there by your side. It is not the simple facts of the policy we are objecting to. I understand that the school committee needs money for future improvements. I, too, want the school to be used for years to come. It is when you're charging organizations which are completely student-based and do not collect any money for any purpose other than to reinvest back into the same organizations, such as the musical or school dances. I know it appears that dances are not going to be impacted. It has been mentioned many times that they won't be affected. However, it is when you use language of, quote, donation, and that the policy won't apply to activities which, quote, do not require a ticket, or are, quote, for NKSD students only, that cause these concerns and leaves the door open to future interpretations. Through researching similar policies in other districts, there appears to be no other fees exactly like this one, in which student-led organizations are taxed. When looking at the Exeter West Greenwich building use policy, it is simple and was written with the well-being of the student body in mind. It clearly states that, quote, the school committee authorizes use of school facilities without rental charges to community groups or individuals from the towns of Exeter and West Greenwich, whose usage benefits the community, end quote. The policy then lists groups that are excluded, and the first and most important exemption listed under this policy is, quote, all groups concerning school-related activities. We hope that you see the passion that students are coming with tonight, and we hope that this passion can be reflected in updating the language of the policy. You all have students in this district, or you know of someone who does. We ask that you revise the policy with compassion for those students. If it's all right, I'd like to submit the language from the Exeter West Greenwich policy to be considered.
Sure, if you could give it to Ms. Healy, our clerk, and she can make sure we get it back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next person on the list is Abby Pezza.
Can I move this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Just making sure. Good evening. My name is Abby Pezza of 928 Slocum Road, and I am speaking on behalf of myself and our senior class president, Leah Popovic of 20 Worsley Avenue. I am here along with the majority of today's speakers with concerns over the North Kingstown building use policy, specifically the issues pertaining our annual musical production. I think it must be reiterated that the students and parents involved with theater are trying to work with the school committee to find a reasonable solution to our worries. I'm hoping that our concerns can be fully heard by the school committee, just as we have paid thorough attention to the discussions regarding why this policy is being considered. It is fair to say that our organization does not receive adequate financial support from the school department. Last meeting, it was noted by Dr. Auger that our auditorium has received a $400,000 lighting upgrade. This restoration does not go unnoticed, and we are very grateful to have received it. The restoration does, these light benefits programs that all the community uses, the community choir, our variety show, and our annual musical. However, we are still the only program that is not included with the annual budget. We have to work from ground zero. Like Ms. Pezza stated at the last meeting, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars are being raised by parents and students, volunteers of their own time, to keep this program up and running. Mrs. Kayaz's stipend is not the only expense while putting on a professional production and should not be noted as a sufficient contribution from our school department. Our hardworking students rehearse more than 30 hours weekly, occasionally 12 hours a day. Mr. Blasbog stated last meeting, and I quote, "I do not want to be pulling money out of organizations that support our school, but this is exactly what this policy will do. Placing expenditures upon our program will hinder the possibilities of student actors and musicians to earn the national attention and higher level praise that we receive. These compliments greatly reflect upon our school as a whole. The proposition of a ticket tax is feasible, but it's not ideal. Upcharging patrons could affect our turnout unless it's explicitly stated that the tax ideas is of the school committee. Perhaps a better alternative would be for the school committee members to be collecting donations at the door, omitting this 15% rule from the theater department altogether. We are prepared to help the school committee find a solution to this budget issue and are more than willing to assist in approaching the town council for further allocation. However, the wear and tear put upon the North Kingstown School Department's facility should have been factored into the budget equation far before I entered my years of high school. Students like me should not have to be jeopardized for the sake of an overlook done by many capable adults prior to our involvement about these things. I am a senior, and I will be leaving this program in the next few months. I hope to be a good steward by advocating for future of the program that has impacted me and so many more beyond words. As the school committee has stated in their strategic plans, we must adhere to the sound fiscal management, responsible planning, and equitable use of all of our resources. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is Kate Scott.
Hi, Kate Scott, 10 Jasmine Circle. I'm not here to speak on the 15%. I knew it wasn't on the agenda, and I certainly could not speak as well as Cassie, I think your name is. You're amazing. So I leave that to these kids. I will support them in any way I can, and if it includes going to town meetings, I'm there with you. My question was around the budget and field trips specifically. What else? I'm wondering if we would ever be able to see the safety report that Ed Ferrario did at the end of the summer around the TAs that were needed in the schools. And I know Hamilton was identified as needing more TAs. However, even though they received additional 80 kids, there are no additional TAs for those kids in the additional classrooms. So I just didn't know if that report was public or if there was a way to get some movement on the results of that report. Secondarily are the field trips. We all know issues with the field trips. My question is specifically around first grade field trips. I do not have a first grader. I have a kindergartner and a third grader. The first grade field trip this year is to the North Kingstown Library, which the library pays for. So it's a free field trip for them. In our PTO meeting last night, we asked a first grade teacher what she would want to do if it wasn't a free field trip, and she said the URI Bay campus. My gosh, that's amazing, but also can't be that expensive. So I was wondering, and I know you can't answer back, but what the options are for adding in a field trip for the first grade that is not free and covered by the public library.
I can give you a call tomorrow, Kate.
Okay, that'd be great. Wonderful. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
On both counts.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Alex Davis.
Hello, my name is Alexander Davis. I live at 9610 Rod Road. Tonight I will specifically be speaking on the 15% policy and how it will affect the high school theater program. At the last meeting it was mentioned exempting guardian and child dances from this rule. However, general middle school dances were to be exempt because they are entirely student admissioned, but adding the parents makes it a different scenario. The guardian child dances should be treated like high school dances where the students bring in outside dates. When it's said that high school dances should be affected by the 15% because of this, it only seems fair that you take the 15% from guardian child dances since it's not entirely student admissioned. It was also mentioned at the last meeting that Ms. Kayaza is paid a salary and that it makes up for the musical not being funded as much as sports. This is illogical, as every teacher has a salary. Additionally, she has to use her split stipend for the resources it requires her to be at these rehearsals, and for other people such as the conductor, assistant director, and choreographer. It cannot be justified that this stipend covers everything that the musical takes up as well. You cannot try and justify the musical's $0 budget by saying the director gets paid. I would also like to discuss upon how the rule was implemented, how soon. And now things are too chaotic with too short of a notice. The musical budget for the following year is decided immediately after the events of a show take place. So this decision roughly takes place in the last few weeks of March. This policy was implemented in August after the budget plans have already been decided for the following year. So if this policy wasn't implemented immediately, then Ms. Kayaza would have had an adequate notice for the following year. We are not asking for a budget, but we are only asking for a relief from this tax, which is where I think our communication is being a little confusing. Another point that must be made is that the theater program does not have their Another point that must have to be made is that the theater program does not technically have to have our performances at the school, and the sports teams don't technically have to have their games at the school. They can be away games. What would happen then? This just comes to show that the policy needs a more stable source gaining its income. This is why I would continue pressing the town council to allocate a reasonable capital budget. You claim that you have asked for a capital budget from the town for many years. Why is it that we are put in this position? The theater program is not only one that is clearly affected by this policy. Multiple members of PTO groups from the school district also addressed their concerns on this topic. A reason why sports groups are not fighting against this policy is because they receive an annual budget, so this is almost like they receive a little less of their budget. I do understand that the root of this problem is that the town is not giving the school committee an adequate and reliable capital budget. This leaves you, the school committee, to figure out what to do next. However, I believe that this will not be effective in the time to come. If we, the people, can work with the school committee to get the money instead of taking it from us, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to be working with you rather than against you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone who didn't sign up to speak this evening who would like to? Okay, then we're going to carry on and roll back to our agenda. So the next item is presentations, recognitions.
Okay, so I have one more item to recognize. So yesterday it was, we learned that the Rhode Island Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association, if that's not a mouthful, would like to congratulate North Kingstown High School as the 2020 George Nasuti School of the Year for Athletics. So that's a huge honor. Congratulations to Dick Fossa, our tremendous group of coaches, boosters, parents, and talented student athletes. That's a real feather in our cap, and I'm looking forward to, there's an awards ceremony on Monday, March 30th, and I will be attending with Mr. Fossa and probably a few other folks. So
Congratulations to everyone.
Yeah.
Next, under presentations and recognitions, is a presentation on our Chromebook replacement plan. Mr. Waterman, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Bless you.
Oh, thank you.
So, as you mentioned, we're here to discuss our one-to-one initiative. 5 years ago, we began this initiative with, in year one, administrators were issued Chromebooks that they learned. Year two was followed up with Chromebooks being distributed to all teachers, and we selected 25 model classrooms. It was a competitive selection where I believe we had about 40 applicants who applied to these model classrooms, and they were implemented in that year. During that year, we learned a lot, and I'm not going to talk about everything that went into the one-to-one initiative. We're going to try and keep it brief and to the point about the device replacement, but there was PD, there was a lot that went into it besides just handing out devices. In year 3 through 6, this being year 6 of our Chromebooks, we went one-to-one with every student in grades 1 through 12 being issued a device, kids in grades 4 through 12 being able to take the devices home, and kindergarten students having iPads in a 2-to-1 ratio. All of the Chromebooks that were purchased, I'm using the word purchase, were actually leased. The first batch, with the exception of the administrators' Chromebooks, those were purchased. It was about 15 that were purchased in year one. Everything else was leased outside of that. So we have Chromebooks that are coming up on 4- and 5-year leases that are expiring. Everything that was handed out to the teachers and those model classrooms were on a 5-year lease and are in year 5. And all the devices that are sent home with our students in grades 4 through 12 are on a 4-year lease, which is expiring over the next few months. So our current student devices, so those are both the model classroom devices, the original model classroom devices, which I'm going to refer to as Dell Chromebooks because they were made by Dell. And our student take-home devices are HP. We have our 2 student representatives who are modeling the devices. Look at how great shape those devices are. I'm looking at you kids. I wish they were all in that good a shape, but they're not. So they are all, I hear one cracking. Well, it looks good. They're all going to receive Google updates through September 2021. So let's talk about why that's important. If you're in the tech world, you heard just a couple weeks ago Windows 7 was retired. That means Microsoft is no longer supporting it, and they're no longer coming up with security patches for it. So what they released, I think it was January 13th, is the end of life for Windows 7. So when you're on a Windows or a Mac device, it's pretty simple. You upgrade to Windows 10 or the latest Mac OS. I've lost what animal they're calling it now. But you upgrade to that next version. Chromebooks don't have that. It's the Chrome OS. Once you hit Google's end of life, the device no longer receives updates. Why that's important, and this is going to come into play in a little bit, is our testing software requires a certain version of Chrome OS. So probably in the next 6 weeks, we're going to get a notification from Pearson and Air Secure and the other testing vendors that our Chromebooks must be at Google OS X. So we're going to get our devices there and lock them there to ensure a stable testing environment. Once Google stops giving those updates, you can no longer upgrade to that version. So it's important when I outline the plan here to remember that our current student devices still have another 18 months worth of updates. So here's our plan going forward. My proposal, and this proposal is not my proposal, even though I'll refer to it as my proposal. This proposal started with our original team who met 4 and 5 years ago, which was from the superintendent right down through building principals. We had representation from elementary principal, middle school principal, high school principal, assistant principal. We had Dr. O'Shea, Dr. Manseri, Mary King, myself, our student, our technology coach, and our systems administrator. So we all came back together and discussed our challenges that we faced over the past 4 and 5 years and came up with a plan on what we'd like to do moving forward. So we would like to refresh all of our devices on a more predictable plan. So 4 years ago, we rolled in, over 2 years, we rolled in 4,500 Chromebooks. This summer, we're based off of our lease schedule, we're on schedule to have to return 4,500 Chromebooks, so have 4,500 going out the back door and 4,500 new ones coming in the front door. That is quite a task in a 8-week period with a staff of six people who also have other responsibilities during the summer as far as breaking all the classrooms down so the custodians can clean, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again so the teachers can teach on the first day, and then having to figure this out is a logistical nightmare. So our long-term plan, and you're going to see this in the next slide, is to get on a cycle where a child gets a Chromebook in first grade, and that Chromebook lives with them for their entire elementary career. So we're looking for 5 years out of that Chromebook. Then, no middle school kids here, right? You guys are all high school? Right. So then, when they enter 6th grade, they're going to get another Chromebook. And the middle school kids, and you were all in middle school, they're the toughest on the Chromebooks. Those Chromebooks, at one point we had a middle school who will remain nameless, actually was putting in as many tickets as the high school. And we all know the middle school numbers, but they were going 1 for 1, and that wasn't on a ratio. That was on a count. So we're going to look to get 3 years out of the middle school Chromebooks, and then when they go into 9th grade, they're going to get another Chromebook. But how do we get there? So we can't have our current devices. We can't have our current first graders not get a new device for 5 years. So that's what the next slide is going to kind of be a 3-year gap where we're going to have to do some heavy lifting the next 2 years to get into this predictable cycle. I'm going to propose to you that we purchase these devices outright versus leasing. And the reason for that is on your agenda tonight is the buyout quote of the lease. We would have paid the same amount for the device. So this is pretty much the cost of the lease is what we're buying out tonight. So the device when we purchased these devices was $159. We could have bought them outright at the time, but it would have been a very heavy lift, which is why we want to get into this predictable cycle. And one of the key reasons we want to get into this cycle from my perspective in the IT office is year 1 when these Chromebooks were all new, that was great. They were in great shape. Year 2 was a little bit tougher. Year 3 was tougher. Year 4 is really tough. So these devices have been in kids' hands going home for 4 years. Parts on them in year 2, they were tough to get because they're all pretty new. Year 3 and 4 was a little bit easier. Now they're going back to, it's this curve. Now they're going back to being tougher to get and also more expensive. So I make the analogy of if you go to the dealership and buy a car, the car may cost you $30,000. If you go to the parts window and buy every part that makes up that car is going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the components. So if I can find a off-lease Chromebook for $79, I'll buy the whole device versus buying just a main board for $89. And that's the going rate for when a main board fails. So it's by owning these devices, we can then cannibalize them. You know, when a main board on one goes, we can take the plastics, the keyboard, the video cable, all the components that make up that Chromebook and reuse them in other devices. As I mentioned, students will be issued a new Chromebook at each level. As part of the RFP process for this, and I'm not asking for a decision tonight on any of this other than the buyout because that's step one in getting to this plan. I'd like to consider looking at an extended warranty on the device, and ADP stands for Accidental Damage Protection. I'm not saying I'm going to recommend that, but I want to at least investigate what the cost of that is. We've been self-insuring for the past 3 years, where we for $25 will insure the device against accidental damage, and that's been working, but not everybody takes advantage of it. For repairs that of people who don't have insurance, we do bill. I'd also like to consider bundling GoGuardian into the RFP to see maybe if we could get even more competitive pricing. You know, maybe some of these vendors want to take a bite at, 2,000 Chromebooks or 2,400 Chromebooks, which is the next slide, plus GoGuardian. That's a big number, so maybe we'll get even more competitive pricing. But when writing the RFP, we'd be able to do a multiple award. So, and then the other thing is our carts are going on 6 and 7 years old. Right now, we've been able to keep up, but we also have to consider replacing where the Chromebooks in grades 1 through 3 and kindergarten iPads are actually stored. Okay, have I lost anybody yet? Okay, so this is the challenge of, you'll see in FY 2024 we get into our grade 1, 6, and 9 cycle. But as I mentioned, we can't just keep rolling over. So what you would see is for FY21, I'm proposing that at these grade levels where it says new, that those grade levels would get a new Chromebook, as well as all of our staff would be issued new Chromebooks because they had them the longest. So if it doesn't say new, this number here, 555, represents the age of the device. So for under here, the kindergarten iPads would be 5 years old, grade 1 would be 5 years old, grade 2 would get a new device, grade 3 would be 5. I'm not going to read the whole chart. You can see it. In 2022, we would look at rolling another year with the iPads. Just as I said, the Google and Chrome OS has an end of life. Apple does the same thing with their iPads. Based off of what we're seeing now, we believe we can get until July of 2022 with our current iPad devices. So we would look at replacing that there. But this is the bridge on how we get into this predictable cycle. You can see diagonal. So I'll start in FY 2022 when a grade 1 gets a new Chromebook. When they're in grade 2, their device has been through 1 school year. Grade 3, 2, 3, 4, and then here you can see they're getting a new one in 6th grade, and so on. So, this is quite the table. I'll give you a minute to take it in. You will see that some devices early on get refreshed after a year or two, and what that's accounting for is our loaner devices. Our loaner fleet, we have about 250 loaners, and those are carts that live in the schools. So if a child's device is out for repair, forgotten at home, didn't charge, if there's an issue with it, they can drop their device off and then borrow a loaner. So some of our early quick turnovers are accounting for us needing to build in loaner devices. So, and then the only asterisk down here at the bottom is that the staff Chromebooks I'd actually be looking at purchasing with FY20 funds that are budgeted. So what I would like to do is give you time to take all this in. I'm happy to come back to another meeting sometime in the March timeframe, because I'd like to be hitting the streets with an RFP sometime in April. And I'd like to write that RFP so that we can purchase our FY 2020 books this year, Chromebooks this year, but also lock that pricing in so on July 1, when the FY 21 funds become available, we can make that purchase. Who knows what's going to happen with tariffs? Last year there was a part shortage, so I want to jump on this as quickly as we can for FY21.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, would you consider moving up the item on the buyout in case there are any more questions from Mr. Waterman
Yes,
before we
I think
let
that
him
would
go?
be a good idea, and we can move that forward. Sure, yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones, you-
Well, just like you're saying, the Google support ends in July 21.
Yes.
So
Thank you for
you have
pointing that
a couple
out.
years that are in year 6.
You will notice that our current sophomores are in their junior year in FY22 or school year 21-22 are using a device at 6 years old. So we strategically picked on the 6th graders and the 2nd graders here because they don't do the large standardized assessments that require that minimum version. So we're confident if an assessment, so we also have discussed if an assessment was to come out and require that, we feel that we could shuffle. We had to shuffle our first couple of years of Park. We had to shuffle Chromebooks around. So we did identify those two groups as being non-standardized assessment groups.
And I already asked you this, but not in public.
Sure.
So the point about, well, I'll combine the two.
Sure.
So the logistical storage of 4,500 plus integrating new ones in. So one, the point of selling some back to the public as a refresh, rehab, sale to the public. And the second point is simply just the storage capacity. I assume the older ones are going to be cannibalized. Just the physical capacity to store and manage that inventory.
So we're fortunate in that we do our storing in the schools. So for example, anybody who's not getting a new Chromebook, their device lives in the school. We go to the school, we transition it from grade 3 to 4, so on and so forth. We do a lot of that at the schools. Yes, we are fortunate in the D building where we do have storage capacity, and we already talked about how one of the things we'd be doing is just ripping and replacing. If a device is in good shape, we keep it as a whole unit replacement. If a device, has cracked plastics, we would cannibalize that device and put it in bins. I'd also not be looking at for normal wear and tear. I wouldn't be looking at doing any charges on anything any parts we're replacing out of cannibalized units. We wouldn't be looking at doing any charges on these 5- and 6-year-old devices because we don't have to buy the parts. We're not here looking to make money. We're looking to get the Chromebooks fixed again. So to your question on the buyout, part of my concern on the buyout was the Chrome OS expiration, and you kind of get stuck. If anybody's had an iPad Air or an iPad 2 right now, if you're trying to download and update to an app, you might be getting that error message that says iOS, XYZ is now required. That's going to come with the Chrome devices. I'm also not confident how many devices I'm going to have in good enough shape to sell. And once that Chrome OS expires, so I'm not shutting the door, and I'd come back to your approval. If I end up with a boatload in good shape, because there are resellers out there that want to buy them. There are resellers that will allow you to turn them in for credit. I know Charahoe has done buybacks on some of their one-to-one devices. So I'm not shutting the door. I just don't want to commit either way because I see what comes in on a day-to-day basis. I see what the seniors turn in every year at the end, and I see the work that we put into rehab those. I'm just not sure we're capable of rehabbing enough where we can say we have 50 or 100 devices that we're not going to need those parts for.
Yeah, I was thinking it could also be a parts reseller too. If you end up with 4,000 of a part.
Yeah. I would certainly entertain anything to bring in additional funds, especially to support. I'm up here enough asking you folks for money, so if there's anything I can do to support it, I would absolutely. I just have trouble. I don't want to say no to you. I don't want to say yes to you because I don't want to be held because I just don't know what I'm going to be. This is probably a conversation that we're better off having again a year from now because I still have 2,000 Chromebooks I've got to get through another year.
Questions? Then if there aren't any more questions, I'd ask if I could have the unanimous consent of the committee to move item, I just circled it, D2, up for approval at this time. Not hearing any objections. So if I could have a motion to approve item D2, and again, just to, in case everyone's not following along as closely as should be. So that is not approving this whole project. We're just approving the buyout of the existing Chromebooks so that we can fill in those gap years and give us flexibility going forward. So if I could have a motion to approve D2. A motion from Ms. Hoskins. Second from Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. You just bought a bunch of old Chromebooks.
I'll reduce your capacity by 100.
Thank you, Mr. Waterman.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so next we have our next presentation, which is item E2, which is the North Kingston High School 2021 Program of Studies presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I didn't think I'd have this pleasure again, but here I am. So, you received the program of studies Mrs. Sweet sent out, and she also sent out a changes in the program of study bulleted point. I will answer any questions you have on either the bullet points or the program of studies. Before that, I just wanted to point out that there's one change that has been made since this bulleted point went out. If you look under science, where it lists robotics, it had completion of concurrent enrollment in Earth Physical Science CP or honors, or physics for engineering, and in parentheses mentioned that this might exclude Success Academy students from taking the robotics course. I addressed the teachers of the course and the department chairs in both science and careers to see what we could do about that situation, because it's never our intent to exclude any population of student through the program of studies from taking a course, especially one as great as robotics. It's one of our courses that's truly for students at all levels, and they can all benefit by it. So we are changing that prerequisite to completion of Algebra 1. That way, students who finish Algebra 1, all students take Algebra 1 as a freshman, whether it be every day or CP or levels, so that they could take it robotics beginning in their sophomore year. So we are proposing that change be made from the bulleted points. I also have another presentation to make for you. I'm going to ask Travis if he could find that for me while I'm talking. So I have Lauren McEwen here with me, and Mr. Garland with me. And we are also going to propose that we make financial literacy a requirement for students at North Kingstown High School for graduation, beginning with the incoming freshman class next year. So that would be the class of 2024 from this. That's it. Thank you. But I would like to answer any questions on the basic program of studies, this document, before we go into the other presentation of financial literacy.
Any questions on what we all received before, or the sort of highlighted redlined version? Right, Jones?
No, go ahead.
All right.
Well,
Go ahead.
I throw my question on Fit for Life 3. So I just don't see the academic rigor to get 3 levels of the course.
And I actually had a similar concern when we were looking at Fit for Life 1, 2, 3 a few years ago. And it was my communication to the PE department, and they complied with making it 3 distinct courses, even though one of them has Fit for Life 2 and 3 students in it. We never allow, and in fact, in our presentation tonight, are going to discuss 2 courses that have very similar standards, so similar, in fact, that it really shouldn't be allowed that students take one and the other for credit, because it's duplicating standards and duplicating credit. And we like our students to have new experiences and be open to new learning. So they did develop 3 distinct curriculum for those 3 courses, and I've asked the PE department to provide them to me so I can forward them to you.
Okay. My other big concern was the language about the mandatory coursework, and my understanding from our conversation was the RAW requirement was the student has to be full-time. So why the language just doesn't say full-time and leave defining that to a different document?
Yeah, the only mention of full-time of the 7 courses is in relation to that Rhode Island Interscholastic League rule as being full-time. It does mention later on, and as a matter of fact, I found a small error in our program of studies when I went back to look at that for you. It says that the expectation is that students will take 7 courses. That's if they don't want to take 8. And that really is because students who are in grades 9 through 11 would be taking PLTs, and we would prefer they take 1 PLT in the 8 section, so which leaves them 7 courses to take. So the question becomes from 9 through 11, if they're not taking 7 courses, what are they doing with that time? In the program of studies, it did say seniors in good academic expanding towards the 7 credits, that should say 6 credits, because the requirement at senior year is 6 credits, because we can release them for an additional offer roll.
Right, so my question is, since the language said 7 courses,
Right.
why don't we just make the language say a full-time, must be a full-time student, and have that, if it's defined elsewhere in the document, like you said, or define it in some policy or in the handbook?
I think we
just
I think we can work on,
to say you have
right.
to take 7 courses if you're an athlete, but later on say seniors don't have to.
Well, that applies to athletes even in senior year. Like if they only have to take 6 courses to be full-time in their senior year for an athlete. That the athletes follow the same coursework as anybody else.
Right, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the language early in the program studies that says for athletes, you have to take 7 courses.
It's only clarifying what we consider full-time status so that they're aware of the real regulation. What used to happen was students used to want to drop courses, and they weren't really realizing the impact that could have on their eligibility for athletics. So that was put in there a few years ago just to make students aware that that's something they have to consider when they're asking to drop courses. We just wanted them to be aware of the credits for real.
Right, which I understand, but maybe I'm confused if seniors can have a lower expectation to be considered a full-time student. So, do senior athletes have a higher standard?
No.
Then shouldn't then
We can adjust that language where it says 7 courses to say, or so it's consistent with the later one that says 6 for seniors. Yes, we can do that. That's no problem. Yeah, we can clarify that. Any other questions?
Okay.
All right. So the financial literacy is a public school requirement. So I have Lauren McEwen here, who's a student, did her democracy project on financial literacy. And Mr. Garland, we all know, is one of the leading finance teachers in the state of Rhode Island, is very active in those organizations. So I'm going to have them talk first about the student perspective on why this should be a requirement, and Mr. Garland from the state perspective. And then I will follow up with explanation of how this impacts us as far as teaching sections and how we would do this logistically.
Hi, my name is Lauren McEwen. I'm currently a senior at North Kingstown High School, and I have been using my senior project to advocate for making a mandatory financial literacy class. I think it's a really widespread problem, the lack of knowledge that students have when they graduate, and whether that's college or the workforce or the military, I think it's really important that everyone has the same opportunity to have a strong foundation for how to manage their own finances when they graduate. So currently, the student debt in the entire country is $1.4 trillion, and Rhode Island currently holds roughly $4.4 billion of that. And Rhode Island is one of only 14 states that currently doesn't have a requirement for graduation to take either personal finance or personal wealth or something along those lines. But that being said, 70% of college students have said that most, if not all, of their financial knowledge has come from their parents. So in a public school setting where there's such varying levels of socioeconomic backgrounds and parental careers and things like that, I think this course can really help level the playing field so that all students are graduating with some sense of understanding of their finances, and then can also pass that down to further generations once they're older. Another big issue is that Rhode Island is ranked 9th nationally for the highest delinquency rates, specifically related to mortgage loans. And although, yes, it's further down the road than just graduating high school, they've done research in states such as Texas and Georgia after their financial programs have pioneered, and they found across the board increased credit scores and lower delinquency rates relating to both mortgages, student loans, and things like that. So I just want to reiterate that I really think that a personal finance course requirement for graduation would be really relevant for all students, no matter which path they decide to follow once they graduate high school. And that's why I've decided to use for my senior project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Good evening. My name is Rich Garland. I'm a teacher at North Kingston High School. I don't really work for the treasurer, but since becoming Teacher of the Year, Financial Educator of the Year, this one here?
Nope.
Yeah.
There you go.
I brought my clicker. I've been tied to the treasurer's office and now the commissioner. So I felt that Dr. Morse had asked me to take you through the status of financial literacy as a required course in the state of Rhode Island. So I thought it'd be a good idea to take you through the timeline and then get to the point rather quickly in terms of where the state is relative to the commissioner and the treasurer coming together. So I've been attending the quarterly financial empowerment, it's called the Empowerment Roundtables with Fidelity, with the treasurer's office. It's been happening since August of 2017. And what that provides is there's a number of teachers, leaders from each of the high schools, Fidelity, a lot of nonprofits coming together. MFI is there as well, like a bank, a credit union, People's Credit Union. And it's a way to network, share ideas, share assets that we would use. I'm consulting, we call them assets that we use in the classroom. But in addition to, it was the impetus really to move forward with an act to make financial literacy a required course in the state of Rhode Island. And it's not really just for public schools. They're talking about private schools as well. So that's every quarter. In December of 2018, the Treasurer's Office issued what's called Falling Behind. It's a document you can get off his website. And it's very data intensive, fact intensive, and a lot of statistics that we use in this presentation comes from that. And that was the impetus to drive the bill, which is the Securing Financial Future for All Students Act, which in June of 2019 went to the senators, actually the Senate Committee for Financial Literacy at the State House. So I testified, I brought a couple of students with me, along with other students. We testified on behalf of making this a required course. That passed, that was sponsored by Senator Kano, by Senator McNamara, and Treasurer Magaziner. Now it passed out of that Senate committee, but it did not pass for the full Senate of the House. And so it was up for review again. It was going to be up for review this fall. That's okay, because in November 2019, Commissioner Angelica Infante Green announced her support at Rhode Island College, announced her support for it to be a required course throughout all public schools. So we was invited to a meeting in January 2020. It's a pivot meeting with the Commissioner and Treasurer at the Department of Education in Providence. And there was a small group of people. The Treasurer was there sponsoring with Commissioner Infante Green. And the preference that, so the agreement was to make it a required course. She agrees with it fully. Her preference is to make it organic as opposed to being a bill that's being pushed out by the State House. And it's good. It's a good thing to do, right? Because if you try to force things on people, you'll get, coming from business where I am, you'll get people that try to get in its way, right? So she wants it organic. So the preference is for organic growth throughout public schools rather than be government driven. That's the current status. So they formed two work groups. I'm on the first work group, and the first work group is really going to start on Monday. It will go for the month of February, deadline for a strategy that will focus on educator preparedness. So that's things like, do we get to micro-credentials, which I'm supportive of. It's enabling teachers. I have the document here. It's micro-credentialing. We'll be discussing that. Professional development for teachers to get them up snuff. To teaching financial literacy. We're going to look at curriculum resources, which we're really big on. So in other words, if we have courses that would have to adhere to the Rhode Island standards, which are tied to the national standards for financial literacy, what are the assets that teachers could use in the classroom? And then training alternatives for professional development for teachers. And it's finally the big subject, funding. So that's what will be discussed. There'll be a strategy to come out of that. The RIDE is there, Treasurer's Office there. We have people from NGPF, Next Gen Personal Finance, Fidelity. There's a rather pretty large group now, but really to focus on that strategy. There's a second team then, and I'll finish with this. It's called Student Outcomes and Equity. When I talk about whether it goes through public schools or private schools, it'll probably start at public schools. I will tell you that the commissioner is looking for, really would prefer one single course as opposed to being spread around throughout a school and teaching financial literacy, but we'll get to that. But the student outcomes and equity was really talk about how it gets rolled out to high schools. And again, she's looking at more of a, rather than government-driven, really organic. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer before I turn it over to Dr. Morse.
Any questions? Okay,
Okay, good.
Much.
So, when we started looking at these, we started looking at things like what courses are concurrent enrollment, which courses are certification. And we looked at the standards in each of the courses to determine which courses we would use as eligibility for fulfilling this requirement. North Kingstown High School is a member of about 1/3 of the schools offering personal finance to students. So we've been a leader in the state in this field. So the 3 courses we looked at that would have the standards that would align to completing the financial literacy competency were the personal finance and investment course. That's a required course already for students in the business, finance, career, and technical areas. So those students would already be on track to complete that requirement. It's currently running 8 sections, which is about 200 students per year. And it's certified financial literacy per State Treasurer's Financial Scholars Program. So we have about 200 students per year that are getting that financial literacy certification. And it's also a concurrent course credit from Rhode Island College. So that enables students to have the concurrent enrollment. They get the college credit. In our accountability system, those kids are counted for students who are having post-secondary success indicators. The next one was personal wealth management. We currently run 3 sections, so about 75 students, if you're counting 25 students per course. It's a semester class. Students with personal finance credit would not be eligible to take the course. So in other words, personal finance and investment, the standards are so close to personal wealth management that we're thinking that's almost duplicating a course. Students right now are able to do that. So by saying you've taken one, you can't take the other, it opens up seats to put students in to be meeting that requirement that aren't currently taking it. And the third course is consumer math. Usually this class is used as a math credit, the math-related credit in the senior year for students who have gone through the Success Academy sequence of courses. We're currently running 2 sections, and we consider that student capacity around 40 students. The nature of the class, we try to keep them a little smaller than your average classes. So there's less than 40 students enrolled in those 2 sections right now. I think it's around 37. And all 3 of these courses qualify as a non-core math elective, which is important to consider when we look at this next slide. So the financial impact, approximate number of students who would meet the requirements based on existing courses, and other students who are already enrolling in those types of courses, are 305 students per year. Estimating the enrollment for the class of 2024, it's about 380 students, and that's little, I think it's a reasonable, but maybe a little on the high side. I took the number of students that we have in both middle schools as 8th graders. I looked at the number of students that would be coming in from Jamestown, potentially, the number of CTE students that would be coming in as freshmen, and we sometimes have a few amount of students that come in from private schools that run K through 8, and so they come into our school as freshmen. So I took all of that into consideration. I looked at the numbers for Davisville and Wickford Middle School over the next 2 years, so what would be the wave of students coming behind that. The 7th grade class is a little bigger than the current 8th grade class, and then it starts to decline a little bit. So I think we would see a bubble the following year, and then we'd start to move backwards. Approximate increased number of students needing the financial literacy course above and beyond the students who are already taking those courses would be about 75 additional students. And that, again, is taking into account that we might be opening up some seats by avoiding the duplication between the personal literacy and finance class and the personal wealth management. So the potential for an overall increase would be, we're estimating no more than 0.3 per course, per cohort that comes through. However, we wouldn't see that next year because all of these courses we're talking about happen in either the sophomore year, junior year, or senior year. So we wouldn't have any freshmen in these courses in the first year, so requiring it of the incoming class of 2024 has no impact next year. The impact starts to happen when these kids start taking the courses, and of course, the next group behind them has the same requirement. We're expecting growth in those areas anyway because the growing of the CTE. So there's a good chance that some of those kids coming in that we're saying, those 75 kids, might already be taking those courses because they're going into the CTE program for business and finance. But, so over 4 years, we could see a bit of an impact, but our intention is to try to offset those by saying students, sometimes they don't take as many emerging technology courses because we've opened up that criteria so much. We added a lot of courses that are now technology-related courses, so we're seeing the emerging tech courses going down in numbers, so that could be an offset to this. Also, this cohort of students coming in are now able to double up on credits. So in the old system, before the regulations changed, if you required 4 math classes plus a literacy course, that would be 4 classes plus another. They couldn't count them for both. You couldn't say, I'm taking a math class, but it's also my financial literacy credit. They had to be distinct credits. Now that's not necessarily so. So a student could be completing a math credit or math-related credit and also checking off their financial literacy requirement at the same time. So it doesn't add a credit that students need towards graduation. It can be embedded in some of the courses they're taking already. Questions?
If the 2 classes are so similar in thing, why don't we just make it one course? And so you know you have a standardized thing and it could have a single CCA that's consistent.
We would still have the consumer math out there for some of the students, but I could actually let Mr. Garland address that because he's more familiar with the curriculum. We did see in the standards a lot of overlap, but I think he's a better expert to talk about why we would not have personal wealth management in favor of personal finance.
Well, I was thinking the reverse. Why wouldn't you just standardize personal finance and investment
right.
as
So
a single course?
Right. Yeah, I said that backwards. So why would we forego personal wealth management in favor of personal finance and investment?
Personal wealth started out as independent living. It was more focused on, it was more focused on, how to buy a car, things like that, for people that were just going to go right into, renting an apartment and so forth. Didn't focus on stocks, investments, and things like that. It's come a little way. It does have to be adjusted towards the standards, which is work to be done, the national standards, which personal finance is. But in fact, it could become one course. Right? But that's work to be done.
Mm-hmm. And we would offer at 2 different levels because right now, because it's concurrent credit, is offered at an honors level course. So we could actually adjust the personal wealth management at a CP level so it was appropriate for the students.
The personal finance and investment is it's Rhode Island College dual enrollment, and you have to have your MBA to be able to teach that course, and that's an incentive for students to take the course. They want those credits as well. With personal wealth, you don't have to have that.
Okay.
So you open up a little bit more of the population, and then it's easier to get teachers as an MBA. I think. Yeah.
Could the breakdown be the difference between the honors and the college prep version of the class?
Yes.
You could.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are 0.5 credit
Yes.
classes?
Yes.
So why wouldn't we just consider reducing electives by 0.5?
Well, that would be our first preference, is to try to fit these courses in by offsetting by other electives. But we can't promise, based on the enrollments of kids, we can't promise that would be the case, so we wanted to go to the worst case scenario. So 0.3 is a pretty high estimate to encompass the extra students. And again, they're not all taking this in the same year. So some would be completing it in 10th, some in 11th. It's spread out over 3 years.
Right, but if we're keeping it at 23 credits to graduate, wouldn't we just change the ratio of free electives? And like we do with democracy, it's 0.5?
It could. But sometimes students elect to take 7 or 8. So even though we only require 23 credits, they want to take more credits. So.
Right, but I'm just saying, sort of on the books, it would.
Right.
At some point, I would think we would also consider an ability to take this in a different variant. You know, if we had an LMS, so you could take it as a module online, or some other self-paced version. I think just as a thing. And my only other concern is being because I applaud this initiative, and I think we're getting out in front of something the state's gonna mandate anyways, but I don't wanna lose the fact that having a single course starts to feel like, oh, that's the one way we're solving it. We don't lose the point of integrating financial literacy, in other courses. I know we're at the high school, but in middle school, right, sort of a built like the discussion we'll have on civics isn't just the democracy class. I don't want to lose the goodness that this is a baseline for students, but we don't lose that this is now the only place you get it.
We do have, oh, sorry.
No, in the curriculum.
Yeah, we did start financial literacy education at the middle school. So we have Ms. Murray and thank you. Right. And Everify is a big sponsor of that. So they are actually getting financial literacy education. It's a great feeder to the high school. So we did expand it out to the middle school as well, but I understand what you're saying, sure. Not the one-stop shop for getting literacy, right? But I do know that the current path for the commission is that you'd rather see it, rather than just spreading it out, which you start to lose control of it, there should be, I don't know how many people would teach it, but one course where you would get at least the students would get certification in financial literacy. So that might be the recommendation. The recommendation I'm going to make is that one way to understand that the students are getting the right education if they're certified. And we're looking at why is that certification. That would mean that your program is meeting the standards.
I know, Dr. Tricia wanted to.
Dr. Mansiri, actually.
I actually just would like to acknowledge Lauren for your thorough slide and presentation.
It was wonderful, isn't it?
I'd also like to acknowledge Rich and Barbara because this is an amazing, very thorough. I think that everybody clearly understands what's going on. We've been doing this for years. Everify has been supporting us, but it really, Rich, the amount of work that you've been doing going up to the State House and teaching a full-time load. And I would just like to say that after the last school committee meeting on Wednesday, January 15th, Rich received an email from the Freedoms Foundation at Valley Forge, and they thanked you for your application to attend the 2020 Educating Young Entrepreneur Graduate Teacher Program. And they congratulated him. They offered him a scholarship to attend and take care of the whole tuition. He'll get housing and meals when he's there. So I just want you to know this is a constant thing that is always being done at the high school. Dr. Morris is overseeing the leadership of that, and our students, as you've seen tonight, are doing just an amazing job with all of their research. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I just want to leave you with one last slide. Mr. Garland put this in my slides, but I have to attribute this to him. He put this quote in there about the idea of financial literacy is we don't send people out into the world driving a car without making sure that they're able to do it. Yet we let students go into a complex society, financial world without any preparation sometimes to deal with it. So I think it's apropos.
And I would just like to comment that I really appreciate this presentation tonight. And I want to note that tonight there are 2 more speakers, and that will make 4 of NK's Teachers of the Year will be presenting tonight. So, so looking forward to that as well. So we have our music presentation coming up next.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody turn the heat down over there. Tony, can you turn the heat down? Oh, okay. She's got it.
Sure, it's not just hot flashes.
What? She's always cold. I'm always cold too. I'm cold. They're taking off their jackets out Tuesday.
So next we have one more presentation on our agenda.
Do I touch the screen? Can I do that?
No. So, this is just being teed up for some kind of approval. No.
That's right. Well,
It's out about 7:45.
It's not on there. That changes.
But it could be.
it could be. You're right.
Well, let me regroup and we'll come back with that.
I'm sorry.
This is very awkward to me. Can we touch that? Yeah, hold on.
Huh?
Don't forget. We're gonna get a phone call from the ADT at 2:01.
Yeah, to the sign. There's a sign. No, he's out.
Okay, so, Mrs. Severa, we have next the district-wide music curriculum presentation.
Hi, good evening. We are here tonight because when we are in our district meetings, we realize that there's so many different things going on at every single school that you may not know about. So we just came to toot our own horn, to be honest with you, and let you know all the great things going on in our program.
We're okay with that.
So my name is Tony Silvera, and I'm the Fine Arts Department Head at the high school.
And I'm Mike Adebaya. I teach at Whitford Middle School. I'm also the curriculum coordinator, K-8.
So what we'd like to do, as I said, is recognize our department, share our successes and our achievements with you, and featuring a lot of the students here in the room. So,
one thing that's unique about our department is very little turnover in music. Most of the faculty have been together for 15 years or more. A great team, and actually the newest member is actually an NK alum, Katherine Beaucler. She was my student at Stony Lane many years ago, went through Whitford Middle School, NK grad, and then on to URI for music ed.
I'm going to stand over here.
Sure. You can do musical chair. All right. Oh,
there we go. So the important thing with our program is that every level makes a difference. Like everyone is a building block of the program. And so at elementary school, the interest is peaked and the foundation is set. Everyone can sing and play. Everyone participates. And our mission is music for all.
I'm going, yeah, there we go. Middle school, the vocabulary is...
Wrong spot.
You went back 2 slides.
Oh, sorry. All right, there you go. This button. Middle school, the vocabulary is expanded, new opportunities are offered, hard work shows growth, and collaboration brings results.
At high school, classes consist of students with diverse experiences and abilities. Students become leaders and listeners. Every voice and every part matters. Students inspire each other and are proud of their performances.
In 2016, the National Association for Music Merchandisers, known as NAMM, awarded NKHS its Support Music Merit Award for excellence. In 2017, they recognized us as one of the best communities for music education in the country, and that year we were the only Rhode Island district to be recognized that year. So, a quick program overview for elementary school. We have K through 2 meeting once a week. All music classes meet once a week for 35 minutes. Grades 3 through 5 for 45 minutes. Our instrumental program begins in 5th grade. This year we have 78% of the 5th graders playing an instrument, which is a really great number. We have chorus at some schools. It's at the discretion of the school. There's some scheduling factors, space factors, but all kids are singing in one way or another. We either through a school program, a musical, or grade level shows that are aligned to their core curriculum, which you'll see later on in the building highlights. Middle school, we have general music grades 6 and 7, general music grades 6 through 8 at DMS. Not all students take general music. It's determined by the student's needs for scheduling and to make sure they get all of the specials at some point in their middle school journey. We have electives 6 through 8, band, strings, and chorus are full year elective courses. And we have new extracurricular opportunities in the jump from elementary to middle school. We have jazz band, some occasionally a school musical. They can audition for All-State in 7th grade. We've had percussion ensemble and also be accepted to the John Philip Sousa National Honors Band. Middle school ensemble participation this year. Whitford has about 54% of the school involved, which is a really, really healthy number. 95 in band, 75 in chorus, 35 in strings. DMS has about just shy of half the student population involved, 90 in band, 110 in chorus, 33 in strings, and they're a slightly larger population, as you know, so that's a really great number. And in general music, WMS sees 100 kids per year between the 3 grades over 2 semesters, and DMS about 85 per year. We now have a district ukulele program through your support. We were able to purchase 2 full sets of ukuleles for both middle schools, and that's a really hot trend right now in music education. It's a great introductory instrument to, it's not as hard as guitar because it's only 4 strings, So it teaches them the basic chords and be able to read melody and harmony, and gets them making music right away, and it actually helps us be aligned with the harmonizing strand of the National Core Art Standards, which were recently adopted by RIDE.
Okay. So I'd like to share with you the high school information. There are 2.2 teachers at the high school, myself, Norma Kayaza, and Brenda Young-Runner. Okay. So as you can see from the numbers from this year, we have a very healthy amount of students taking music courses at the high school. A lot of that is because of the new 8-period schedule, so kids have more flexibility in their classes. We are also being able to reach now the kids who need resource classes or extra math or English, because with that extra period, they can finally also be part of our program too. So doing the math, we average about 60 students, meaning 60 seats a year, and then that gives us about 41% of the students are in our program with plenty of room to take more in.
Actually 600, not 600.
600,
600 students, yeah.
Okay. All right. So our Cte Music Academy is growing. Right now we have 26 students in, with 7 freshmen being, well, incoming 8th graders have already been approved. They passed the audition. And the idea of a Cte Music Academy for us is preparing kids who want to have a career in music. And so we do this by, one, teaching them how to audition. That is a core aspect of being a musician. You can get accepted to URI, but you might not pass that audition to actually become a music major. So we give them that training through auditioning for all states, Southern New England, and other options like that. They also get to audition for honors ensembles, meaning they can be in all states, Southern New England, John Philip Sousa. They work with a different conductor, playing with high-level kids from state, regional, or around the country. You get 16 credits from Rhode Island College by the time you finish our program. Those credits can transfer to other schools. Sometimes the conservatory doesn't accept transferred credits, but we give the students enough knowledge that they can take a test to test out of a course and maybe start at a higher level. And we have internships. We've already had a student do her internship in music education over at Wickford Middle. We've had another student at the Rhode Island Philharmonic School learning how to conduct and lead an ensemble. And we are starting a student in music production working with Sound Advice in town, where he'll be learning how to set up mics and do live sound in production in a live venue. Okay?
So where did the 26 students, are they all from NK, or are they from out of district?
There's a few out of the district, but it's a small amount.
Do you know which, I'm just curious where.
What school systems they're from?
Yeah, just for towns.
We have Warwick, I believe, several of Jamestown. We have a Warwick, and we have South Kingstown coming in, and we have 2 other Warwicks coming in, and I believe Exeter.
And you mentioned with Rhode Island College, do we have any relationship with URI?
Yes, we do, but they do not do early enrollment program like Rhode Island College does for music.
And they don't even do concurrent enrollment?
They do not for music. But we do often send our students there. We have competitions there, and Southern New England Honors Band is hosted there, and I invite the conductor to come and do workshops and master classes, so there's a relationship. Our students want to be in their pep band now, you know? Go see the basketball games.
Did we skip that one?
What did I skip?
I think you did slip a slide.
You got the controls.
All right. Sorry. There it is. All right.
So the big thing about high school music also is we want to be inclusive. That's part of our goal in our philosophy statement in our curriculum. So some of the classes we offer are ensembles, so if you are a musician, you can definitely play. But for those kids who are garage band kids, or they make beats on their computers, or they're just music fans, we've been creating classes to make sure they're included too. So we have music theory, creating with Chrome, history classes of American pop or jazz, and we are getting non-musicians in there too, because we want to make sure that we are creating supporters of the arts as they graduate high school and become members of society.
Did that one? Oh, wait. Going backwards. All right, here we go. It's this one.
All right. So small ensembles is a core part of our program too. We have student-led chamber groups where kids kind of form form their own groups together. I'm there as a supporter, and so is Ms. Kayaza. And they pick their own music, they learn how to arrange it, to organize it, and then they perform at community, civic events, school events. So here's a short clip of our jazz combo. They taught themselves the music, they organized themselves, and they play at the town hall art opening. Go back.
Oops.
Go back, go back.
So, oh, there we go. Froze up. Can you touch the screen? Advance it that way?
There we go.
All right, there we go.
Jazz bands. North Kingstown is known for our strength in jazz bands. We have jazz bands at the middle school level and the high school level. They meet before school at 6:30 in the morning. This way the students can also do sports and do robotics, or if they're in the musical, we make it work. So we have the kids here playing a quick snippet for you from our senior jazz band.
Sing it, Mayor.
No, that's why I'm an accountant.
Oh, you got it? Yeah, now it works again.
All right, so we have a new ensemble called Modern Band, that's a small ensemble. This is a trend around the country with National Association Music, because now the music of the 50s and 60s is history music, and 70s. So, in Modern Band, yeah. So these students learn R&B, pop, rock music. They pick the songs themselves, they arrange it themselves, and as part of our CTE program, they need to learn how to talk to someone about going to a gig, and where is it going to be, and is there electricity, and do I have to bring a piano? And they learn all those things to be a professional musician. They played at our open house, they played at the Wickford tree lighting, and also at the pep rally. Can I play it? Yeah.
There it goes. Oh. Okay, next we have the high school musical. It involves about 110 students on average, either on the stage in the orchestra or backstage. As you probably know, there's very strong community support for our show. Lots of faculty involvement. I serve as the orchestra director. Ms. Beaucler is the assistant director. Ms. Kayaza is the artistic director. Ms. Youngrunner helps out in the pit, either playing or as a woodwind coach to help coach the kids. And I can safely say, as this is my 9th production this year that I've been involved with, and it is brings so many students together focused on a common goal, that being to give the North Kingstown community outstanding production of whatever show we happen to be putting on that year. This year, you may know, is Mary Poppins. It's amazing to watch this process evolve from the first auditions to the excitement of production week. Over 100 students involved in the cast, orchestra, tech and lighting crews, set builders, costumes, display their hours of hard work for the community to treasure and talk about for years to come.
Just like high school coaches go into other high schools to scout out the talent, what's going on, other theater directors and music directors come to our show to see what level we do at North Kingstown High School. All right, so just like the sports have all their championship wins, well, let me tell you, we have ours too. And as you can see from the list here, we have won gold or silver since 2010. We often win the top award in the best band, orchestra, choir at the event. We compete in the States, we go national and also international. Honor ensembles. An honor ensemble is when you audition and you go to another group to sing or play. Here is our total for students for this year only that made honor ensembles from grades 7 through 12. We have 60 students involved.
And not only did we have 60 students involved, we had 10 ranked number 1 on either their instrument or voice. 3 of those were from Whitford Middle School and 7 from North Kingstown High School.
Nice. Oh, wait. Oops. And these 4 gentlemen that also played in our jazz combo, they made senior all-state jazz, which means they get to play at the Newport Jazz Festival this summer, which is absolutely amazing.
And Danny Ventura has been number 1 jazz pianist since
birth.
Yeah. Since he was eligible to try out, so 7th through 12th grade. So he was never got knocked off that podium.
And we're proud to say that our own Lizzie Berline has been nominated, and she has been passed the auditions being the All-Eastern Chorus last year. She got to go down to Orlando. And then this year she made All-National, which is such a huge deal, singing with the best of the best in our country.
Faculty spot.
Yep. So what we'd like to do is take a quick moment to recognize our faculty. You often see us on stage and we're out there, but our elementary teachers really deserve a shout out on many things too. So we're going to just quickly tell you a little bit about them. Elizabeth Charest is from teaches at Quinissa and Fishing Cove. As you can see, she shared with us that her students are playing ukuleles and using mallet instruments in their concerts. The 2nd grade performed at their poetry night. And also, personal note, Liz is a professional flutist, and she also performs at the Wakefield Concert Band, using their talents to raise a lot of money for the South Kingstown in the South County Health Center. Go back one.
Okay, Sue Curzio teaches 5th grade strings and band in many of the elementary schools. It says Liz, but Sue has been performing on bass with the Salve Regina Newport Community Orchestra, South Coast Community Chorale, and as a private instructor, and she's recently helped to promote a colleague's bass duet book with a public TV performance on State of the States.
Okay, unfortunately, I can't show you the video, but Bill Dwyer in Stony Lane has been using technology and also guitars, percussion, and mallets to teach his students how to not only play and read music, but to write their own compositions. The other fun thing he does is he has the kids videotape themselves with Screencastify. They email it to their teacher, and this way he can give them a little personal insight of ways to improve their playing at the elementary level. Michelle Hall teaches at Forest Park and at Fishing Cove. Michelle does performances with all the grades at both schools, and she also has a 4th and 5th grade chorus at each school. Just recently, Michelle went to Salt Lake City to attend an ORF workshop, which is when you learn to play with the small mallet instruments. And also this summer, she's going to go to an acoustic music institute and focus on singing and songwriting and playing guitar, and she brings her banjo into class to incorporate that too. Theresa Martinez is from Hamilton Elementary. Theresa is an amazing music teacher where she goes into the classroom and works with all the teachers to take their curriculum and incorporate it into some kind of musical show or production. So she has something lined up for every grade there. She also does elementary band. And personally, she is a professional musician playing at the church in Providence. And she recently attended a drumming workshop sponsored by RIMIA, and she'll be bringing the arts integration lessons she learned into our classroom.
And next we have Katherine Beaucler, Davisville Middle School Strings and Chorus. Members of her 7th and 8th grade chorus sang the national anthem at a URI basketball meeting back in January. Members of her 7th and 8th grade string groups are playing at the Empty Bowls fundraiser in March, and 7th and 8th grade strings and chorus will be participating in state festivals. And she was pretty humble when she wrote that. They always do really well. They either get an excellent or superior rating for all the years that her and Brenda have been in that position. So, and she's also a member of the Jamestown Community Theater. She starred in their production of The Music Man this past fall as Marion the Librarian. She's currently rehearsing for the role of Louisa for Art Playhouse's production of The Fantastics in March. and she's also an active board member of that same theater company.
So my colleague here, Michael Adabaya, teaches at Wickford Middle School, band and strings. You often see his groups winning awards at state festivals. He's at the parades, both Veterans and Memorial Day with his groups. And he also sometimes takes his group down to South Kingstown, right, to do a collaborative concert. On weekends, you can see him on Cape Cod with the Cape Cod Symphony, playing percussion and timpani, and he also plays with a lot of other musical groups around New England, and he teaches at Salve Regina. And he was the Teacher of the Year in 2016, and he is this year's guest All-State conductor for All-State Jazz Band, Junior Jazz.
Next we have Mr. Mr. Thibodeau. DMS has 90 band members strong this year in grades 6, 7, and 8. They make appearances annually in both the Veterans Day and the Memorial Day parades, and in 2010, Mr. Thibodeau was the RIMIA Junior Honors Band guest conductor.
And Brenda Young-Renner teaches at Wickford Middle School and also at the high school. And her 7th, 8th grade choruses just went to Barnes & Noble and helped use their music with their fundraisers. She also brings her groups to competitions and does well. She's hoping to start up a talent show over at Wickford Middle. At the high school she comes and teaches piano keyboarding, and she has been a godsend for us starting this whole program, learning all the technology. And on the side, she is a woodwind player. She plays flute at the Barrington Chamber Ensembles. And she also plays in a lot of pit orchestras, both professionally and community and school-wise, and she often plays in our musical pit.
Okay. Next we have Ms. Piazza, Norma Piazza. She wanted to report that this year's musical is Mary Poppins. You may have heard that already. You're going to hear it again later on. They're adapting to our new curriculum. The choral groups are focused on sight reading skills and strings are focused on their rhythm skills. And in April, a representation of the concert choir and orchestra will be performing in Salzburg, Vienna, and Prague. And Norma's got quite the career. She's performed major operatic roles in recitals throughout the United States. She's been seen locally recently in Elijah with the Warwick Symphony as well as the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And lead roles include Fior Deligi and Così fan tutta, the Mozart opera at PPAC, and Mimi and Opera Providence productions of La Boheme and The Queen of the Night and the Magic Flute with various opera companies. She's adjunct faculty at the University of Rhode Island and was the first place winner of the Northeast Division of National Association of Teachers of Singing Professional Artists. Wow, that's a mouthful. All right. And next, my colleague, esteemed colleague to my right, Tony Silvera. This year, the Symphonic Band will professionally record the Star Spangled Banner and share copies with the town for school and civic events. CTE students will help record and mix that recording. We will host our first piano and harp recital for high school students in April. You'd be surprised how many kids play harp. Every year we get a few. You'd think it would be rare, but it's catching on. Pro Jazz Combo will come in and perform for the jazz history classes. And she always brings in professional musicians to lead master classes throughout the year, so our students are learning from some of the best in the area. She's currently the president of our Rhode Island Music Educators Association and advocates for Rhode Island Music Ed in Washington, D.C. She has led college workshops in teaching special needs in the music classroom and has been published in various music journals. In 2012, she was the RIMIA All-State Junior Jazz Guest Conductor. And in 2013, she was Teacher of the Year, North Kingstown Teacher of the Year, and she made it to the top 5 for the Rhode Island Teacher of the Year. So, this is Silvera.
So you are always invited to any of our productions. We have the dates there for the musical. We think that's the first thing coming up. And then we have an all-town chorus. We have grades 6 through 12 performed together. We have all-town strings, which is grades 5 through 12 going together. The reason we don't do all-state, all-town bands, we can't fit everyone on the stage with instruments. That's the reason why.
It's just logistically tough to do.
Yeah.
But if you ever want to see an actual working model of the curriculum from elementary school to high school and witness it in action, these are the concerts to go to. It's pretty incredible to watch the evolution through the grades. And then you have something coming up, the South County High School Jazz Concert featuring NK High School, Narragansett, and SK,
Yeah.
April 16th.
And that's kind of fun because a lot of the musicians are also athletes, so they're used to playing against each other, and then this night we're all playing with each other. So. All right, so we have a Twitter. Follow us. I always pick pictures of the kids. Today, a bunch of the kids here, we did headshots for getting our music resumes ready for CTE. And just to show you that we are dedicated teachers.
Here it is, Beck.
There we are. That's our first year.
First
and
year,
us.
Washington, D.C., and last year, messing around, taking a selfie.
Wow, that's awesome.
This one here, we're together. Oh, don't take a picture of that.
Less gray hair, a lot more hair.
Yes. All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Mr. Jones had a question on the presentation. Just
Yeah, thanks. It was actually good to hear sort of the I won't say non-musical, because that's not right, but like the production and other things are incorporated in this. Two quick questions.
Sure.
So one is sort of summer and other outside of the academic year to keep students, the technology and other stuff, where we're at with that or where we want to go. And then, you know, this committee has talked with the superintendent about reimagining the library, which hopefully is a goal that this committee will adopt. You got me thinking about how we would reimagine our band room and other things to lean more forward. So how we might start thinking about getting the students to do some design thinking of how we might make those spaces more prepared for the future.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That is great. But the great thing also about our room is when the electricity goes off, we still play.
So your first question was about just summer activities?
Yeah, just sort of like outside of the borders and boundaries, how students can, you know.
There's a lot of opportunities to play in the summer. I run a band camp for elementary kids that are going into 6th grade, so a lot of them, mostly it's 5th graders entering 6th grade, and I do an older group, so I keep them playing. 6th, 7th, and 8th are invited. For strings, South Kingstown already has a well-established string camp, so we kind of send our kids to that one because they do such a great job. There's jazz camps. URI has a jazz camp. Salva Regina has a jazz camp. URI also has a string camp and a band camp. There's also a performance camp at Rhode Island College. So there's a lot of opportunities. Did you mention technology specifically?
Yeah, I was, you know, because I always think like language of Rosetta Stone, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like ways, and I always see like Keith Urban learn the guitar. Like, you know,
yeah,
but just kind of, you know, how we can, you know, leverage whatever technology to you know, keep students progressing.
I think the desire that we'd like to have in technology is to get a space for our keyboard lab so we can set it up correctly. We know space is an issue at the high school, we understand that. And then also to find ways to move into production and engineering and using our laptops toward that. That would be wonderful. As far as the performance things, I think we're in a good place. Our programs are big and the kids are playing, and but for technology, I think the keyboard area and production would be wonderful.
Any other questions?
I think we're good. Thank you again.
Thank you
so much.
Skip a radio.
So, moving on with the agenda. I'll let them file out. So the next would be the student representative report.
Okay.
Mr. Vento, you're up.
I'm going to mention this briefly because it was mentioned tonight during citizens' comments, but it's come to our attention
at Student Union, the table building use policy, as it is worded now, will negatively affect after-school organizations, in addition to programs that include ticket sales. And it's just our hope that this policy can be altered, if it hasn't already, so that it does not put any constraints on these organizations. And then the second item, I'm delighted to present that the Student Union will be moving forward with elections for our president and vice president position. So previously, the president and vice president position has been selected on a volunteer basis. So I volunteered for the vice presidential position back when Josh Nerona was the president of the student union, and Annie did the same once we needed a vice president. So, yeah.
You were volunteered, isn't it?
Yes.
That might be a little more accurate.
So I'm also delighted to present that the first election will be held on November 12th, 2020, and we figured this is convenient timing. Not only the national election just a couple weeks prior, but also it gives everyone in every grade a chance to choose their representative. So the freshmen will be at the high school at that point. They'll be adjusted to the ways of the high school, and the seniors still have a chance to run and or vote. So if you have any questions,
So you're gonna have like campaigns and...
Yeah, we're going to have a forum at one of our meetings where student union members get to hear the vision of people who are wanting to run.
And the voting will be conducted?
Well, it's interesting. I was able to contact a member of the Secretary of State's office who, they have an excellent program. They provide ballots and voting machines for high school elections. And I saw this was done in, I think it was West Warwick, I might be wrong, but they provide the ballots and the voting machines. They only need 2 to 3 weeks notice, but it's a great program. I'm actually going to be attending one of their elections, so we can just see how it's running there, and then take that information and hopefully use it in our
So
election.
some would simulate real vote?
Yeah. That's
Or
it.
alternatively.
Yep.
You can allow absentee ballots?
Early voting.
Early voting?
I think it's going to be on
multiple
Party
voting?
registration.
If you have any questions, I can go on for like hours about this. It's a very thorough plan. But if you have any questions, just email me. I'll be glad to respond.
Well, thank you very much. Good work with that.
Thank you.
So we did citizens' comments. Next, moving to routine items. If I could have a motion to seal the executive session minutes of January 28, 2020.
So
A motion from Ms. Hoskins, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously, and I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session. Any items to exempt from the consent agenda? Just note that we already approved item D2 and E1.
I need to exempt C1 and 2.
So we have C1 and 2. Any others? So then if I could have a motion to approve the non-exempted or already approved executive session items.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hoskins. Need a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So for C1, I will make a motion to approve items C1 and 2. Need a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And I assume abstention.
Yep.
So no abstention. Next, I think, Mr. Jones, you sort of whispered to me, do you want to table this? The idea for this, I was under the impression that the town council was having the legislative agenda at their next, legislators attending their next meeting, but I found out that actually it was at their meeting last night, so the idea was to sort of slip in there. I think it's something we still need to talk about in general. The idea is to let them know. Generally, they prefer to have 1 or 2 items that are on the school committee's priority list that we instruct them to, sort of push for in the coming session.
I'm wondering, well, if there's consensus to do like we did with our PD topics, which is just send a quick survey with a bunch of different, the funding formula, field trips, and just have members state, and we can come armed going, here's the topic areas that are you know.
Yeah, we gotta be careful with that, but,
Well, it's
yeah.
just indicating interest, it's not like we did with the PD sessions.
So we can revisit that. So we don't need to make any formal votes or anything on that tonight, but so think about what you want them to be. You know, on my personal list would be, I mean, we've done resolutions on a couple of these topics in the past, but the field trips would be on my list. That's gaining some traction with a recent article by Mark Patinkin in the Providence Journal. It's a fast way to get things done on Smith Hill. Just have a good article in the paper.
The funding formula.
Funding formula is another huge one. So just, you know, sort of food for thought. So next, we have approval of the program of studies. If for discussion purposes, I'd like to get a motion to approve item G1. A motion from Ms. Houskins, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion?
I just want to clarify, Superintendent, we're going to amend the language
Amend which language?
on the required courses.
Yes.
So we can.
And I think we had another, and we had changes that weren't in the document.
Right, which you mentioned what those were
Yeah.
tonight. Yeah.
Right.
Good presentation.
I'd ask for clarification of whether this includes amending to include personal literacy as a requirement.
Yeah, that was my.
Well, so here's, so that's not in what we have
For the
tonight.
freshman class.
So, I mean, I think you'd probably have support in doing that, but I would actually want to see, I think we'd want to approve the actual language. So what I would suggest
Put it on the
is,
next agenda.
let's, I mean, approve it tonight and then.
I'll approve the
amend-
program of
right.
studies tonight.
And we'll amend it,
With the
right.
graduation language on the next agenda.
That's what I would
Okay.
suggest, so we'll do it that way.
Yep.
Which means I need that tomorrow, Barbara.
Sorry.
Next meeting is next week.
I have a motion and a second to approve the program of studies. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you again for your hard work on that. Next, we have appointment of a member to the North Kingstown Building Committee. The reason for that is our representative had been Mr. Jones.
Mr. Tony Jones.
Yes, sorry,
And
not this Mr. Jones.
I neglected to replace him when he left, so we do need a formal replacement for that committee.
And I would volunteer to do that unless someone objects or wants to jump on board. Someone could make a motion to that effect.
Yeah, motion to approve the chair as our school committee member on the North Kingstown building. Is it North Kingstown School Department Building Committee?
School committee, building committee.
Yeah.
Because, it's your committee.
Okay. Second. I have a second, so motion from Mr. Jones, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. There's no conflict. I do not have a financial gain for volunteering for this.
You could put Jake on the committee since he's not here.
I was actually
being
thinking
volunteered.
Pretty good. Next year.
So we have that. Unfinished business, 2018-19 school budget. Anything to report? 2019-20 school budget.
No.
2021 school budget. So we have that.
You have that. I will repeat this again at the next meeting. We need to vote on a number for the general operating budget, and we also vote on the enterprise funds on February 18th. That's our next meeting. What normally happens from there is Dr. Rouget and I let the town manager know what the number is that we're requesting for town property allocation. And then we follow up no later this year by then March 2nd with the actual budget package. But we, kind of give them that preliminary number. But when I say a number, what I mean is that if you have any idea of reductions or additions or changes, it would be a good idea if we could talk about them before the 18th, because what you can't do is say, Superintendent, could you go back and check on this or that? You have to vote on an actual number. That's what you're voting on when you vote for that budget. No, well, we'd like to see this or like to see that. We would have to assign actual numbers to that, and we can certainly do that on the 18th. But just so that you know, if I don't look into that ahead of time, they might not be as close to exact as we'd like them to be.
So for example, if there's a particular program that you would be adding or reducing, we really need to give Mrs. King a heads up that that's something that you, motion that you intend
So we
to
can
make.
talk about it,
so
right?
that she can run the numbers and find out the exact financial impact of the proposal that you're making. Otherwise, we can't adjust our number accordingly, so, or at least not accurately.
And then-
I may have overlooked it, but the 19, the actuals in Excel, we get that?
Yeah, I sent you that. I can resend you that. I sent it
My
to you
bad.
about as soon as you
I know.
asked for it. That's okay.
Just double check that. I probably knew you would, but, and then, just real briefly, what we still won't know, right? We won't know from the trust any
Well,
big
you know,
number, we won't know.
No. Well, there's a lot.
We don't know the charter school lottery.
No, there's a lot we don't know, and so the next steps in the process are, so by March 2nd, the town manager receives, the budget package. Soon after that, in the budget calendar, he presents the town budget that includes our numbers. From there, we have, right now on March 20th, Friday, March 20th, it looks like the way the town council is going to have their department meetings this year is an all-day session. So a couple of years ago, the town council did during the day session, I think they did 1 or 2 days. They moved that to splitting it up between a couple of nights. Last year, I'm pretty sure we were there at night. This year, they're going back to the day format. So right now, tentatively, we're scheduled for March 20th at 9:30 in the morning to go and answer any questions that the town council has on that budget. From there, the next milestone meeting is April 6th, which is the public hearing. And that'd be a public hearing for the town, and then there's a separate one for the school, be on the same night. And from there, it's around May 4th, 5th, somewhere around that time frame, that the town council adopts the budget for FY21. So there's a lot outstanding. With the increase for health and dental, sometimes we know that before the March 20th meeting. It just all depends. The communication that I've received from the trust, we've really asked them a little bit too early, so they really stick to what the national trends are. So I budgeted 5%. Knock on wood, in the past years, we've been pretty lucky. It hasn't come in quite that high, but that's always the national trend that we kind of look at. I'm not sure what the town budget's for, but they sometimes get the number just in time for them to report appropriately for their budget. The charter numbers, like Mr. Jones said, there's an awful lot.
Do we know the ARC from the state, from the pension?
No, oh yeah, you do. You know the pension numbers last year. Yeah, the pension numbers are exact. The percentages are exact. But, so we will make adjustments in May, not only based on what the town council allocates to us, but also based on everything that's happened since you got that first draft in January, which we prepared in December. So it's all really early.
The governor's budget matched what Rye put out for?
It did.
Okay.
It did, but that's another number.
Right.
That number, unfortunately, we won't know that until the end of June.
But
So
at least-
that's
at
another.
least there's no surprise changes in the
Yeah,
budget.
no, not yet, no.
And April, that'll be at the high school?
Yeah, the April 6th meeting, I'm not sure about that, the public hearing.
Because there might be a lot of people.
We probably will talk about that with the town clerk. Last year, I'm pretty sure we had it at the senior center, the public hearing. So it all depends on what happens to be going on at the time, so we'll talk to the town clerk about that, on where she's gonna schedule that. We're, as a team, we think it's best to have it, yeah.
Okay, so, then we're at CIP existing bond, future bond. No new business, and any questions on the financial reports in the packet? If not, we've reached the end of the agenda. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. A motion from Ms. Hoskin, second Ms. Hildebrand. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.
Everybody, have a good night.